Frankenstein, a novel by Mary Shelley about a monster created by a mad doctor, has been adapted for the big screen hundreds of times since the birth of cinema. From Young Frankenstein to other masterpieces such as Alvin and the Chipmunks Meet Frankenstein, the creature lives on in the cultural zeitgeist. They're trying desperately to create a new Universal Monsters universe, to mirror the days of the Hammer horror films, and they've failed time and time again. The only success they've had was by accident. If you haven't seen The Invisible Woman, stop what you're doing and go and watch it. It's a great film. What if I told you that the story of Frankenstein is being told to us again, in the form of Better Call Saul? If Breaking Bad did Percy Shelley's Ozymandias, then it only makes sense that the spin-off would do the most notable work of his wife, Mary Shelley. Let's take a look at the latest episode. When Gene was at the bar with Buzz from Home Alone, he was using the name Victor. Talk about layers. His real name is Jimmy, but he's currently Gene, channeling Saul, who is using the name Victor. Now, the name Victor has made an appearance before. In an earlier season, we saw Saul and Kim use the fake names Victor and Gazelle during the con that resulted in them getting a tequila bottle lid. But the name Victor is also the first name of Dr. Frankenstein. To add to this, in the movie Young Frankenstein, sorry, I know it's pronounced Frankenstein.
My name, it's pronounced Frankenstein.
In Young Frankenstein, Victor Frankenstein is played by Gene Wilder. Gene is playing Victor both in the movie and in Better Call Saul. In the book Dr. Frankenstein's Daughters, one of the daughters of Victor is named Gazelle, which just so happens to be the name Kim used during the con. It all connects. We've got a few more Frankenstein references in the episode. When Saul is taken out to the desert by Walt and Jesse, he refers to Jesse as Igor, who is Dr. Frankenstein's assistant.
That means you're Igor and...
If we were to look at this story as a story of Frankenstein, then one way to match up the characters is this. Insane mastermind Victor Frankenstein, Saul, creates the monster, Walt, whilst Igor, Jesse, is merely assisting, not even playing a mentionable role in the creation of the monster. Igor was so irrelevant to the broader picture that he wasn't even mentioned in the book. This just backs the theory that this episode contextualizes Heisenberg and the fact that all of Breaking Bad was Saul's fault. Saul is Victor Frankenstein, Walt becomes Frankenstein's monster, and Jesse is Igor because he helps turn Walt into the monstrous persona. Also, when Jimmy enters the RV, he says, "It looks like James Whale's Travelin' Roadshow." James Whale was the director of what movie? Correct, 1931's Frankenstein. Saul also mentions Frankenstein in his conversation with Mike in one of the flashbacks. He says, "You walk like Frankenstein." Now, I don't have anything to say about this other than it is just an overt reference to the thing that this show has been alluding to all along. So I thought I'd mention it. The parallels between Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul and Frankenstein are wonderful. The idea of Walt as a monster is very appropriate. Just like the monster, Walt starts off with good intentions. He just wants to do something for his family before he dies. Frankenstein's monster is also a very sympathetic character shortly after his creation. He just wants to make a connection with the family he discovers. However, like Walt, his destructive nature ruins everything around him and he is forced into exile. I'm not sure if this also alludes to this, but during that scene with Jesse and Walt, there's a shot of Saul holding a flask over Walt, making it seem as if Walt is inside the flask. I don't know if it's intentional or one of those happy accidents, but it almost feels like it represents Walt being Saul's-Victor's experiment. It is worth mentioning that Victor Frankenstein and the monster both die together, by self-immolation. Before the end, they both admit that they, instead of opposites, adversaries or even the creator and the creation, are actually two sides of the same coin, manifestations of the same hubris. Great, familiar themes abound. A lot of debate can be had over who is the monster and who is the creator. Is it Saul and Walt? Jimmy and Chuck? Walter hid his selfish desires behind the austerity of noble science. Both Walt and Saul were both born with good intentions, only to be perverted by a wicked world. But at the same time, an argument can be made that Chuck is Dr. Frankenstein in this scenario. Now, Better Call Saul is ripe with references to the infamous monster. Frankenstein was created by harnessing the power of lightning. This encourages us to look back at Chuck, and we wonder, how is the fact that he was afraid of electricity connected to the fact that it creates monsters? Maybe there's something there. Saul is a monster that was created despite Chuck's fears that he would one day go too far. Chuck knew all this chicanery would catch up with him, that lightning would give birth to the monster. Even look at the room Chuck died in. The damaged and ripped up walls give off Frankenstein vibes. It's like he was trapped in his own mind, his house a metaphor to convey his mental imprisonment. He was considered eccentric, a little mad, just like Dr. Victor Frankenstein. I don't know, what do you think? Is Chuck Dr. Frankenstein and Saul is Frankenstein's monster? Let me know. It's also worth mentioning that when Jimmy talks about Walt being clay to mould, it brings to mind the Jewish folklore of the golem, where a man creates a monster out of clay that later turns on him. The legend of the golem is seen as the forerunner of the Frankenstein story. Now, here's my theory. Jimmy is both the monster and the creator. He calls himself Victor because he believes he is a genius. But what he doesn't see is that he has also become the monster of his own creation. Frankenstein is all about birth and creation. Dr. Frankenstein succeeds in creating a human life form, very much like how God does. This mirrors Jimmy creating Saul Goodman, a monster who wants to connect with humanity, but ultimately is only capable of driving those he loves away. Gene is also back from the dead, but he is not exactly the same as before, much like how the monster was made up of different parts of corpses. My favourite allusion to Frankenstein in this episode, apart from Victor's name, is the beautiful fade from the grave in the desert to Gene in his bed, his body filling the space like a corpse. Victor Frankenstein, as mentioned before, took bits and pieces of dead bodies to assemble his monster. Gene's victims, who we know Gene selected purposefully, seem to reflect men from Jimmy's past. Small-town barfly con artist with a belly like Buddha echoes Marco. The second dude is a financial planner talking about diversifying, echoing both the conversation and the speech patterns of Victor and Gazelle's first mark, Kevin. And that brings us to Cancer Man, Stuart from The Big Bang Theory. Once Gene, and now we the audience, find out about the cancer, he obviously is a stand-in for Walter White on every thematic level. If Gene's shock hearing about the cancer was feigned, then choosing this guy as a victim, consciously or unconsciously, is still selecting him to represent Walt. But if not, if that really was a surprise, then I think that particular mark was chosen to represent Cliff Main. He's so decent, so accepting of the system without bitterness or despair. All he does is focus on the vast majority of it that works, and he does his best to help who he can. So conning and stealing identities from elements of the dead past, and using them, at least the wealth scammed from them, to build a monster. This is the story of Frankenstein. And if we really want to look for the Frankenstein references, all we have to do is glance at all the people with the fake injuries in Saul's office. They can be seen all walking around like deformed Frankenstein's monsters. Of course, we can't not make mention to the fact that the Gene scenes are also filmed in black and white, just like those old Frankenstein movies. I haven't seen anyone make this comparison yet, so I'm going to put it out there. I have a feeling that in the finale, Marion is going to stumble across one of Saul's old videos on YouTube, and she'll confront him about it. Gene will then kill her, accidentally, while trying to stop her from reporting him. Jeff will then call the police, and that'll be the end of Gene. I believe this is what will happen because in Frankenstein, there was a scene where the monster was hanging out with a child by a lake, and he accidentally killed her, not knowing his own strength. This is what turns the villagers against him and leads to his downfall. I believe Better Call Saul will mirror this by ending the story with the murder of an innocent. Jimmy McGill has become a monster of his own creation. It reminds me of the poetry of one Marshall Bruce Mathers III. 'Cause nobody wants to see Marshall no more. They want Shady. I'm chopped liver. That's all for today, folks. If you could be so kind to leave a like and subscribe, it's completely free and you can always unsubscribe at a later date if you don't like what I'm posting. Subscribe for more Better Call Saul content and other stuff. Bye.
You should try one of these. You walk like Frankenstein after he was probed by aliens. I can get you one.